Okay, this is going to be a brief presentation to get you set for doing the work you'll be doing on your Brown versus Board of Education assignment. This one is also related to the Civil Rights Movement, but it's an event that happened in May of 1963 called the Children's March. It was part of the overall effort to get rid of desegregation, but it's more than just desegregation in schools. It's desegregation in all society, and Birmingham, Alabama was apparently one of the most segregated and racially violent cities in the nation at that time period. So this brief presentation shows you how in that city what they chose to do was organize the children, because the adults were afraid of getting fired from their jobs, to go out of school and march in support of this whole effort at desegregation. Now, if you want, you can come back to the video and pause it so you can read this page, but I just wanted to put it up there for you so you get a brief explanation of some of the things that were going on there, but also show you some pictures of the event. Now, this shows a picture of children who were engaged in the protest. And this shows you a picture of children actually marching. This is a book cover. And this picture shows you some of what was done to the children as they were engaging in the protest in the park. You see, they'd gather at a church, and they'd march, and they'd go to this place, and eventually the police would arrest them. But some of what they would do to try to control them early on in the protest was put fire hoses on them. See, here's another picture of that. But those are just some basic pictures. But what you're going to be analyzing are sources that you find. Now, the source that I found for this example is this article in the Washington Post from May 23rd of 1963 called Social Sabotage. So I'll read it. Whether malevolence or sheer stupidity prompting the ousting of 1,100 Negro students from the Birmingham public schools, the action stirred immeasurable mischief. It is of a piece, like kind, with yesterday's declaration by the governor of Alabama that he will personally defy a federal court order to let Negro applicants be enrolled at the University of Alabama. Both are incitements to violence, as reckless and dangerous in their context as lighting a cigarette in a room filled with combustible gases. So what was happening was those children that participated in the march were now being expelled, even though they kind of said they weren't going to do that kind of stuff. The expulsion or suspension of the Birmingham school children is a piece of social sabotage. Its effect, if not its aim, is to unsettle the tentative racial strife in the city achieved by white business leaders working in collaboration with Negro leaders and in direct opposition to municipal authorities. So what that's saying to you is that the Children's March seemed to be working because the white business leaders and the African American leaders were cooperating. Who didn't like that were the municipal authorities. Now, what the municipal authorities means, the police, basically, and the school board. They didn't like this cooperation. That it did not immediately touch off a fresh spate of violence is a tribute to the restraint of the Negro leadership in Alabama and to the discipline which has thus far characterized their followers. But that discipline may not be proof against a flagrant attempt to penalize the children for essentially innocent breach of school regulations. These children are not truants, and they are not criminals. They were absent from school, and they were put in jail for violation of a local ordinance, because they engaged in a peaceful protest against racial discrimination. This was the whole of their offense, that they sought to be Americans, and it was for this that they were put in jail. It was part of the understanding reached by white and Negro leaders that there should be a kind of general amnesty in regard to nonviolent infractions of local law arising directly out of protest. Whatever the legal justification for suspending the school children, a flagrant breach of understanding was involved. All right, so it looks to me, again, you don't have to wait to analyze the source to when you're done going over it. You can analyze it as you're thinking through it and reading it. It looks to me like the march was succeeding, and the authorities, the mayor possibly, the police chief, Bull Connor, the school board, didn't like it. The action was taken by a school board and a school superintendent under the direct jurisdiction of Commissioner Bull Connor. So those people were kind of under the control of Bull Connor. If Bull Connor and Governor Wallace and other diehards are unwilling to submit to the courts and conciliators, the people agreeing together, there is nothing for it but to subject them to the higher authority. The United States has plenty of resources available for that purpose. Governor Wallace says that the federal courts would not hesitate to jail or otherwise punish lesser officials, but would hesitate to take such actions against the governor of Alabama. Perhaps the time has now come to show him that he's entirely mistaken. In other words, perhaps we should arrest with federal charges the governor of Alabama, who's not cooperating with the federal laws against desegregation that we're starting to build. So, let's go look at the source you're going to be using. All right. You're going to be using a form like this. Now, you're going to be using this when you do your Brown versus Board of Education assignment. But you see here the basic topics in red are the ones you're going to fill out to show that you're thinking and analyzing the source. So what I did was I pulled the URL address of the source. I assume that pretty much all of the sources you use are going to be web-based. And then I put it into a nice, neat little tool called a URL shortener. So you paste it in there, you click shorten URL, and you get the nice little URL shortcut. So instead of having a big long thing to paste into our form here, we just have this little tiny one. Now the name of the website was ProQuest Historical Newspapers. That's where I got this document to read. Then what is the source? Well, a newspaper article. Then the next thing, more important than the three before it, what does it tell us about the Children's March in Birmingham?